On the night of October 24th, 1942, a torrential downpour lashed the primitive jungles of Guadalcanal in the South Pacific. Muddy, suffocating, and swarming with malaria and toxic insects, this place was a living hell. On a narrow ridgeline defense perimeter outside Henderson Field, a place that would forever be known as Bloody Ridge, the lines of the 1st Battalion, 7th Thrace Marines, 1st Marine Division, were dead silent. At that very moment, concealed within the pitch-black jungle directly across from the American lines, 3,000 fanatical soldiers of the Japanese Army's elite Sendai Division had already fixed their bayonets. They were waiting like a pack of wolves in the dark, ready to launch a fatal Banzai charge, and directly in the path of the impending onslaught, at the core machine gun position, stood just a single heavy machine gun section. Leading them was a 25-year-old sergeant named John Basilone. At that stage of the Guadalcanal campaign, the American supply lines had been virtually severed by the Japanese combined fleet, and the airfield was on the brink of collapse. Japanese commanders sneered during their pre-battle briefings, believing that in the face of absolute human wave tactics and the fierce spirit of Bushido, these exhausted, cornered Americans wouldn't last even 3 minutes. However, the price of arrogance is often paid in the most devastating amounts of blood. At Zen-Ur Parkplatzem, a piercing whistle tore through the roaring storm. 3,000 Japanese soldiers erupted from the jungle like a tidal wave, charging madly toward Basilone's position. The moment the battle began, it degenerated into a vicious white-hot melee. Because the Japanese onslaught was so overwhelming, within just 12 minutes, the American defensive positions to Basilone's left and right fell one after another. Even more desperate, a precise barrage of Japanese mortar fire dealt a catastrophic blow to Basilone's section. In an instant, out of a 15-man crew, only Basilone and 2 severely wounded comrades were left breathing. Worse still, their lifelines, 2 M1917 Browning heavy machine guns, were bone dry. From continuous, frantic firing, the water-cooling jackets had completely boiled off, and the gun barrels were glowing red-hot like branding irons, threatening to burst at any second. Looking out at the dense mass of screaming Japanese soldiers wielding bayonets less than 30 yards away, any normal person's only choice would have been to abandon the position and run. But not Basilone. This former Army boxing champion felt the raw, soldierly defiance deep within his soul completely ignite. With absolutely no cooling water left, Basilone made a mad, suicidal move that would forever be written into military textbooks. Pushing his wounded comrades aside, he reached out with his bare hands and gripped the red-hot, blistering barrel of the heavy machine gun, which was sizzling at several hundred degrees. Searing metal instantly hissed against his flesh, filling the air with the pungent stench of burning skin, agonizing pain of flesh being literally cooked alive. But Basilone didn't even flinch. Letting out a savage, beast-like roar, he hoisted the 100-pound iron beast and sprinted through a hail of bullets for a staggering 150 yards through the mud. He charged alone toward another destroyed friendly position just to repair another jammed machine gun. For the rest of that night, this single ridge became a one-way ticket to hell for the Japanese army. John Basilone by himself became an impassable wall of steel. He sprinted maniacally back and forth between the 2 machine gun emplacements. He would empty a belt on the left, then immediately brave flying shrapnel to rush to the right and keep firing. The moment the heavy machine guns completely jammed from extreme overheating, Japanese bayonets were already at his chest. In that breathless split second, Basilone drew his Colt .45 automatic pistol, dropping enemies with precise point-blank shots at a distance of less than 5 meters. When his pistol ran dry, he swung an entrenching shovel and even used his bare fists to literally smash the Japanese soldiers who breached the trench. As time ticked away, a terrifying and unbelievable spectacle unfolded on the battlefield. The Japanese Banzai charge was forced to a grinding halt directly in front of Basilone's position, not because they stopped attacking, but because the piles of bodies Basilone had gunned down stood over a meter high in front of the trench. It formed a literal wall of flesh and blood, completely blocking the charge path for the remaining Japanese troops. The enemy was actually forced to send out suicide squads just to clear their own dead before they could even attempt to move forward. This brutal war of attrition raged continuously for 3 days and 3 nights. By the dawn of the 3rd day, a faint light broke over the horizon. When American reinforcements finally broke through the perimeter and rushed onto the battered ridge, the scene before them left even the most combat-hardened Marines frozen in shock, with some turning away to vomit. Inside the trench, which was flooded with spent shell casings and foul blood, an exhausted John Basilone sat slumped behind that horrific wall of corpses. His feet had long since rotted from days in the mud, and the palms of his hands were burned so severely that white bone was exposed beneath the charred flesh, yet his fingers were still locked tight around the machine gun triggers. Over those grueling 72 hours, single-handedly and fueled by a willpower that defied human limits, he had fired a staggering 26,000 rounds of machine gun ammunition.
and lying silently before his defensive line were the bodies of over 1,000 elite Japanese soldiers. By holding the line alone, Basilone saved the entire airfield and shattered the Japanese counteroffensive on Guadalcanal. For his actions, he was awarded the United States' highest military honor, the Medal of Honor. However, the epilogues of heroes are often accompanied by the most poignant destinies. After becoming an overnight celebrity, Basilone was hailed across America as a legendary war hero. Washington recalled him to the States, putting him in a crisp pressed uniform to tour major cities, give speeches, and raise war bonds. He married a beautiful wife, gained immense wealth, and possessed the peaceful life most could only dream of. If he wished, he never had to return to a smoke-filled battlefield again. Yet, in the dead of night, listening to the rain outside his window, the image etched into Basilone's mind was always that torrential night on Guadalcanal and his brothers who lay in pools of blood, never to return home. In 1945, Basilone made a choice that shocked the nation. He voluntarily walked away from his comfortable life, turned down a commission, and stubbornly requested to return to the front lines. Facing his wife's tears, the iron-willed warrior gently wiped them away and said softly, "I'm no hero. My brothers are still bleeding on the front lines, and I can't sit back here in comfort. I have to go bring them home." On February 19, 1945, the Battle of Iwo Jima erupted. As a legendary veteran in the very first wave of the assault, Basilone once again displayed his godlike combat prowess. Confronted by heavily fortified Japanese underground bunkers, he single-handedly slung satchel charges and sprinted across the exposed black sand beaches, destroying multiple core enemy strongpoints and saving countless pinned-down rookies. However, at the exact moment he was guiding an American tank out of a lethal minefield, a Japanese mortar shell traced a cold, silent arc through the sky, landing precisely at his feet. The legendary machine gunner who had once stopped 3,000 men alone and achieved the ultimate infantry miracle was gone. His life was frozen forever at the age of 28 on the black volcanic sands of Iwo Jima. The wheel of history rolls forward. People often marvel at the sheer scale of the D-Day landings or the devastating power of the atomic bomb. But the truth of history never tells you that the peace and freedom of this world are never decided by cold machines of iron and steel. It is forged, one scorching bullet at a time, by countless ordinary men like John Basilone. Men who, to protect the brothers behind them and the homes they loved, dared to hold the line with their own flesh and blood in the deepest dark of night. This is the story of World War II they never told you.